Well, good morning, everyone. We get together most weekday mornings to do two things: to train entrepreneurs on what it takes to have a fundable business, and secondly, for our current and prospective distribution partners to help give them the competence and confidence to be able to train others. So while we do these daily Zoom trainings, it's great. We're actually looking for financial literacy instructors that are willing to go out into their communities and teach this curriculum at churches, at chambers, community centers, business organizations, rotaries, and so forth. So if you should have interest in helping us spread the word about the grant and how the program works, please be sure to let us know. The easiest way to do that is on chapmanloanprogram.org. If you scroll down, there's a resources section, and that right here is where you can get signed up so you can go out and frankly get paid to teach this curriculum. That's not the focus of today, but we are wanting to do a lot more in-person training. Before COVID, we did a lot. COVID kind of moved everything online, but we find that when we're in front of people, we communicate with them face to face, we have the best impact and the greatest participation. So please consider that. We're on chapmanloanprogram.org, and we're talking about the Startup Business Funding Package. Now, this is the title. It's an accurate title, but I don't think this is the reason why any of you are here today. I think probably what has drawn you to join us, and we're thankful that you did, is the fact that we applied for and received a grant, and the grant has a very specific purpose: to help form new businesses. If I can highlight it, for some reason it doesn't want to, there we go, for fast funding. Now we got it, except for the F. So there are many small businesses that want and need capital, money to start, to grow, to reach their potential. We talk to some that are frankly in a desperation state. But regardless of the circumstances or even the industry or location of the business, the key to getting business funding is to be fundable. And that's really what we're going to talk about over the next few minutes is: what does it take to have a fundable business? How does the grant provide free resources to help entrepreneurs become fundable? And why are each of these elements important? Because I don't think just talking about the what is good enough. You all are smart, you're experienced, you're analytical, right? And so it's not about the what, but it's about the why. So let's go through this with the understanding that we're not here to ask your opinion or for you to get my opinion on this content. This is a matter of fact. This is what it takes for a small business to be fundable for funding. That's irrefutable. Now, it's certainly up to each entrepreneur. Do they want to be fundable or not? Certainly, they can become fundable by using this knowledge and doing it on their own, which is perfectly fine. Or they can enroll in the Startup Business Funding Package, and we provide the turnkey package for them through the grant. It doesn't matter about how they want to implement it, but our grant does require us to educate, and we're going to start that now. So if the goal is to have a fundable business, that's the goal. That's what we're trying to get to, a business that can get funding. And I mean a lot of funding, and I'm talking about business funding, not personal loans, of course, business funding. First thing we need is a unique business address. So again, we said we're going to talk about the what and then the why. The what of that is a unique business address is incredibly important to show the lender that you have a credible business, and we need to back that up with documentation. I'm going to pivot over to a moment to another one of our resources called the Cheap Business Address. And although my computer apparently is running slow, the screen hasn't populated here. But on Cheap Business Address, we like to refer to it because it gives us, there we go, it gives us a nice description of the documentation that lenders will often ask for. So we know that a residential address is not a good not credible. We know a post office box is not credible. We know shared addresses where you have the same suite number of others is not credible. So we need to have a unique address. That's what we said here, unique commercial address. But furthermore, it's the full documentation that we may in fact need. They may ask for, give us a copy of your lease. So you can't just say, oh, yeah, I've got a good address. They're going to want to see documentation of that. And an important element of that documentation is called the landlord's lien waiver. So what we're doing here is creating a checklist of what it takes to have a fundable business. Having a unique business address with a lease that validates what you're saying is important, and that it needs to also have the landlord's lien waiver. If we don't have that, then we can't check this box. We're not a fundable business. It doesn't mean you can't fix it, or that, you know, we can help you. And of course, we provide this through the funding package. And of course, that's free, but you can do it on your own. Regardless of how you resolve it, this is the checklist. That's the first fundamental element. Many small businesses fail to meet that, so they're not fundable. Once we have the address knocked out, now we're ready, and it's also free through the grant, is get filed with the Secretary of State to form the business. Now, you might already have a business formed, and that's fine. So if you want to do the capital raise off your current business, again, we're giving you the checklist of what you need to do so you're ready to go to funding. If you already have it all, scroll on down to resources, and right here, you can click and we can go to funding today. No upfront costs, no hard inquiries. You're ready to go. But if you don't have these elements, which of course we're still going through, you have one of two options. Well, one of three options. Don't get funding, or participate in this to get funding, or fix your business on your own to meet these criteria, because the criteria is the same. Okay, so once we have the address, we talked about the what and the why. That's important, and how we have to be able to validate it in many cases with a copy of the lease. Then we've talked about filing with Secretary of State, and then we need to file with the IRS and get our EIN, kind of like a social security number for the business, open our business bank account. So this is the underlying foundation of a credible business. So are we ready to go to funding now? We're not. We are not ready to go to funding now. So what we need to do next, which of course is free through the grant, is to add primary trade lines. We want to add primary trade lines under the EIN. We call that business credit. I was working with the director of finance of a Mercedes dealership yesterday afternoon, where we're helping a client get a new vehicle in the company name. That allows it to be fully tax deductible. It's a new trade line on the business credit, and it qualifies for Section 179 of the IRS tax code, which allows for accelerated depreciation. So this is a $186,000 Mercedes. That's one hell of a write-off, isn't it? So there's different types of trade lines that we can add. It could be business automobiles, business real estate, business credit cards, so forth. But what we're going to do is add primary trade lines so we have a credit-worthy business. That's important, right? Well, why is it important? Because you got to remember that this is not some game of Monopoly, right? If our goal, and we'll talk about the Chapman Fund in a moment, but regardless, if our goal is to go borrow $100,000 or $250,000 or millions of dollars, they don't just give that away. It's not play money, it's real money. And so they need to see, meaning the lenders need to see that it's a credible business. And how do we determine that it's a credible business? Well, as we've stated, we start with kind of the infrastructure, but we need to show the world that we actually have had access to credit and we paid as agreed. So this is great. We do this for free. It's very important. It's a common barrier that a lot of small businesses face, but we can resolve that. But it's not instant. It takes about 30 to 60 days. So this process here is not instant. To get credible, which I know we're still talking about, it takes about 30 to 60 days. You might say, well, that's a problem. I need funding sooner. Not a problem. We can get you plugged in, which we'll talk about in a moment, and we can go ahead and get you financing offers now, give you some working capital now while we're building the business out. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, you'll just type that into the Q&A box. It's like a chat box on Zoom. All right, so now we've set up the infrastructure of the business, got all kinds of free resources through the grant. We've covered that. Then we're going to add business trade lines, primary trade lines, not AU, not authorized user, primary trade lines that report on the business credit profile. Lots of different options if the client wants, again, business automobile, business real estate, business credit cards, lots of flexibility, but that is what's next. One last step to be fundable, and this is the one that we face the most questions on because most people have not been educated on this. And again, you all are smart, but if you and I went out and polled 100 small businesses and said, describe what's on a balance sheet. What is a balance sheet? Embarrassingly, over half of those small business owners don't even know what a balance sheet is. Well, that's a pretty big gap in financial literacy because we need a balance sheet that looks solid for funding, and half or more of small business owners don't even know what it is, let alone have one. So we help them create the financials for their business, the balance sheet, and we don't want the balance sheet to look empty. See, a lot of times I'll hear from entrepreneurs, well, you don't understand, my business is new, so of course I don't have any financials. That's a horrible approach. That doesn't need to be the case. Sure, you have a new business, but let's make it a credible new business. How do we do that? Well, we talked about building creditworthiness just a second ago under the EIN. And then now we're talking about what we need are assets on the business's balance sheet. And we do that by providing $10,000 of real assets legally transferred over. Why is that important? Because now the business has collateral for funding. And then we can turn around and liquidate those assets that are in the form of receivables and create liquidity. It's excellent, excellent. So once we have created the infrastructure, the first three bullets, then we build out the credit, build out the collateral. Now we're ready to go to funding. Again, it is a 30 to 60-day process. Some people say, I don't have that long. That's fine. And come on down. Let's go to funding for what you qualify for now. Some people say, no, I've got all this in place. Great. You don't need this then. Come down here and let's go apply for funding right now. When we get to funding, that's the final bullet. Now that we have a credible business, we have lots of options, lots of places that we can go for funding. SBA guaranteed loans, non-SBA, term loans, revolving accounts, lines of credit, lots of options. And so that's where we'll work with you to figure out what's the right type of funding based upon your uses of funds, the needs that you have. We're working with Eric and Veronica, who are both on today. We're working on several large projects, one of which is a client of theirs that needs $7.5 million. And we're close to submitting that for funding, maybe even today. So this can be a really big amount or a smaller amount. Don't worry about the details of how the money is going to be used. That will become relevant, so I'm not dismissing it. But to this point, it doesn't matter if they want to start a church or a whorehouse. We need to have a credible business. When we get to the funding phase, now, of course, it matters the mitigating circumstances from the client's perspective. I just say all that because there's many different types of funding. One type of funding you may not be aware of, and I think you should be, and it's called the Chapman Fund. So I'll step aside and give an analogy for a moment. Some of you despise this part, but so there are taxing authorities across the country. Well, the federal government is a taxing authority, right? They have the legal authority to charge you taxes. So money comes into the federal government and it supports things like highways and bridges and government infrastructure. And then you have state taxes and local taxes and so forth. Well, we're not here to talk about taxes, but there are some local taxing authorities like Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you wanted to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma, they would literally pay you $10,000 to relocate there. It's not fuzzy money, it's not dirty money, it's just simply tax-based money to encourage professionals like you, like me, to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Not what we're talking about, but that's a good example. Well, there is something called the Chapman Fund. The Chapman Fund is not to get you to move to Tulsa, but it's to get you to start a business. And the Chapman Fund will go from 30 up to 250,000. So that is an example of funding that we could certainly look at, and you should qualify for by having this infrastructure. But sometimes people will pepper me with questions. Could we do a loan from Chase Bank? Could we do a loan from Wells Fargo? Sure. At this point, if you understand what I'm trying to explain, we have a credible business. This is what's needed. So there are many sources of capital. The Chapman Fund's one of our favorites. And it may be that we just use it for the first tranche. Maybe 250,000 is not enough for what you need, but we could use the Chapman Fund for the first 250 and then move on to something for a larger amount if needed. So the bottom line is, we can help your business get positioned for funding with no risk. There's a simple 2-step process to qualify, to participate. It's easy. It's easy. 2 steps. Step 1, watch the training video. Now, the truth is we've kind of gone through the training video, but the protocol is watch the training video. And then the second is to enroll. That's it. Click here to enroll. And I'll click on it. There's no secrets. There's no surprises. You click on that and it's going to pop up. Slowly, it pops up a new page. You could do it on your phone too. I'm not as nimble on a small device, but it's going to pop up and ask you to initial off, and then we'll be able to implement this process. So there shouldn't be any question, well, what's going to happen? We're going to do these things, right? Which is going to allow us then to go to funding. So encourage you to do that. Through the grant we receive, there's several requirements we have, one of which is to do frequent financial literacy sessions. So we do these online via Zoom now, most Mondays through Fridays. We're also looking for instructors, as I said earlier, to go out and teach it in the community. If you'd like to be one of our instructors to go teach this material out, you don't do it for free, the grant page, but that would be the bottom resource. The top resource, going from top to bottom now, the top resource is actually the same as here, so there's no difference. The second resource is the financing, which we've talked about several times. The third is another requirement we had from the grant, which is to show success stories. So with that being said, you can go to chapmanloanprogram.org. It reiterates everything that we've discussed today, and just simply follow this 2-step process. If you're referred today by one of our referral partners, then you want to get back with your referral partner, and your referral partner can help you get set up for the program. So who has questions, comments, concerns? We try to end a little earlier on Fridays. Normally we go 30 minutes on Fridays. We try to cut it back to 20 minutes. Is there anything that I didn't cover accurately or adequately that we needed to cover? All right, Jeff is asking about, again, and I can confuse people, the difference between the cheap business address and the Chapman. So the cheap business address essentially takes just 2 of the bullets, Jeff. It takes the top bullet and the bottom bullet. That's it, top and bottom. And that standalone is available on cheap business address. And in fact, it describes what's included here, Jeff. The unique address, including the mail forwarding, the full documentation, which we've talked a little bit about, as well as geographic access to the Chapman Fund. All right, so who has questions, comments, concerns? So I think the takeaway from this is you got to decide, what are you trying to accomplish? So if what you're trying to do is to get funding for your business, you can very simply kind of cross-reference your business's circumstances with this checklist, right? So does your business meet these credibility standards? If so, awesome. We're ready to go to funding. Scroll down here, click, and let's go. Let's go today. But if you have a current business that doesn't meet these criteria, then there's one of 2 choices. Either on your own address this, which you can. You're smart enough, you're competent to do it. Or what you could do is enroll. We could build out a new business through the grant that's specifically for the capital raise. Doesn't mean you have to get rid of your old business. You can own multiple businesses. Felicia's asking about contact. Absolutely. So we have a contact box here, name, email, phone, referred by, or you can let us know what you're wanting to speak about and you could submit. So that is there for you, Felicia. And again, our distribution partner role is right here. So as a distribution partner, and we call that financial literacy educator, it's certainly not get rich quick, but you can teach this curriculum in person or online to individuals or groups. Each person that you teach the curriculum to that goes through, you make $1,250. So it's not like winning the lottery. It's not life-changing. Most of us that are out teaching live groups will average around 20 people per class. You don't have to set up the classes. We'll have hosts set up the classes. So you're going in, you're teaching, and then for those that want to leverage the resource, you help them with the two-step process. It's a lot of fun, it's simple, and it's very much needed, right? Because I think you would agree, I hope you would agree, I suspect you'll agree, most people that own small businesses or want to own a small business want and need money, and they typically don't qualify. This is specifically what it takes to qualify. All right, well, with that being said, we're past the 20-minute marker, so we'll be back on Monday. You're welcome to come back and join us on the live session any day next week or any point in the future. You can bring guests if you would like. And if you're not plugged in as a client, as a participant, here's how to do it. Crazy simple. Why don't you go ahead and give it a try? There's no risk to you. If you'd like to get paid to help teach, go ahead and click on this and get that set up, and we'll get you processed today. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you Monday morning or before. Have a good day. Bye.